This is Discover USA Collapse, and today we're exposing a terrifying truth hidden in plain sight, inside the very cans of soup that millions of Americans rely on every single day. For decades, canned soup has been marketed as the ultimate comfort food. Fast, cheap, and ready to warm your soul on a cold night. The labels show steaming bowls, smiling families, and slogans about home-style goodness. But behind the glossy branding lies a darker story, one that the food industry does not want you to know. Because while you thought you were buying convenience, you may have been buying danger. In fact, just this year, Walmart had to recall one of the most popular canned soups across 34 states after contamination fears spread through the supply chain. Thousands of customers rushed to return products, while millions more were left wondering if the can in their pantry was secretly contaminated. And here's the chilling part. That wasn't an isolated incident. Investigations have revealed that many of America's biggest soup brands are quietly loaded with toxic sodium levels that wreck senior hearts. Mystery preservatives banned in Europe, and even traces of heavy metals from poorly monitored factories. These aren't just minor slip-ups. They are calculated risks that corporations take to save pennies, while gambling with your health. Think about it. Soup is supposed to be simple. Vegetables, meat, broth. Yet when you turn the can around, you see a laundry list of unpronounceable chemicals, stabilizers, and fillers that would shock your grandmother. The truth is, what sits on your shelf with a smiling chef on the label may be far closer to a chemical experiment than real food. And the scariest thing, you might already have served it to your children, your spouse, your aging parents. So today, we're pulling back the curtain and counting down the 5 canned soup brands you should never, ever trust again. These are brands that dominate grocery aisles, brands you've probably eaten for years, but brands whose shortcuts and scandals reveal a shocking disregard for American families. Because the real cost of convenience isn't the $2.49 printed on the Walmart shelf. It's your health, your trust, and sometimes your life. Number 5. Campbell's. For more than 100 years, Campbell's has sold itself as the heartbeat of American kitchens. That red and white can isn't just food, it's an icon, immortalized by Andy Warhol, advertised during the Super Bowl, and stacked floor to ceiling in Walmart aisles across the country. Generations of families grew up believing Campbell's was the very definition of safe, wholesome comfort. But peel back the label, and what you'll find is not a symbol of tradition, but one of the most troubling cases of corporate betrayal in the U.S. food industry. A single can of Campbell's chicken noodle soup contains close to 1,700 milligrams of sodium if you eat the entire can, which most people do. That's nearly 3/4 of the daily limit set by the American Heart Association. For seniors, that kind of sodium surge doesn't just mean bloating or thirst. It means elevated blood pressure, hardened arteries, and a sharply higher risk of fatal heart attack or stroke. And the salt is only the first red flag. Look closer at the ingredients list. Monosodium glutamate, soy protein, isolates, modified starches, potassium chloride, yeast extract, and flavor enhancers that sound more like chemicals from a lab than items you'd ever cook with at home. These additives are linked in medical journals to migraines, kidney stress, and long-term digestive issues. Yet Campbell's markets its soups as a healthy option for busy parents and older Americans, on fixed incomes who trust the label without a second thought. But here's where the story gets darker. In 2023, watchdog groups sounded the alarm when it was discovered that Campbell's had been sourcing vegetables from suppliers in countries with weak pesticide oversight. Tests revealed residue traces in cans sold right here in the US. One test test in the US. Raising. Chilling questions about what consumers were really ingesting. At the same time, a Consumer Reports investigation found that some Campbell's products still showed traces of bisphenol A, BPA, leaching from can linings. Despite the company's loud public promises to remove BPA years ago, BPA is not a small issue. It's a hormone disruptor linked to infertility, developmental issues in children, and increased cancer risk. Imagine serving a warm bowl of soup to your grandchild, thinking it's safe and comforting, only to later learn that the very can it came from may have poisoned their body with endocrine-disrupting chemicals. And Campbell's knows the image. Game. Every commercial paints the brand as nostalgic, trustworthy, and all-American. But step inside their massive industrial plants, and you won't see homemade care. You'll see conveyor belts, vats of chemical flavor bases, and production, at a scale designed to maximize shareholder profit, not consumer health. And when consumers push back, Campbell's PR machine floods social media with cozy images and carefully worded denials. This is how a company builds a billion-dollar empire. Not through better ingredients, but through psychological trust, manipulation. Meanwhile, American families are left paying the true cost: emergency room visits, blood pressure medication, dialysis, and shortened lifespans. The betrayal is brutal because it's so personal. Campbell's was the brand our grandparents swore by, the can our parents heated when we had the flu, the label that promised home. But the truth? That can on your shelf is closer to a slow-acting health hazard than the comfort food it pretends to be. This is not just a question of taste or price. It's a question of survival. Campbell's has built an empire on American trust, and it is exactly that trust which has been most ruthlessly exploited. Number 4. Progresso. Marketed as the premium alternative to Campbell's, Progresso soups line the shelves of Walmart, Target, and nearly every grocery chain in America, with bold claims of being healthier, heartier, and full of quality ingredients. But the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that Progresso is less about progress and more about profit, using slick advertising and buzzwords to cover up the same shortcuts and risks that plague the canned soup industry. For years, Progresso has promoted its soups as having no artificial flavors and no MSG. Sounds reassuring, right? But independent food labs and watchdog groups have exposed that Progresso still relies heavily on hidden glutamates, like hydrolyzed vegetable proteins and yeast extracts that act almost identically to MSG in the human body, triggering headaches, sensitivity reactions, and overstimulation of the nervous system. It's a classic corporate trick. Ban the obvious, additive, but sneak in its cousins under new names. And the sodium problem? Even worse than you'd think. A single can of Progresso's traditional chicken noodle clocks in at around 1,400 to 1,600 milligrams of sodium, which for many seniors is almost the entire safe limit for an entire day. Doctors have repeatedly warned that soups like this are a hidden driver of America's high blood pressure crisis. Progresso tries to counter with their light and reduced sodium lines, but even those still contain nearly half a day's worth of salt in one serving. And as if that weren't alarming enough, Progresso has been caught up in serious contamination scandals. In 2020, Progresso issued a recall after undeclared allergens were discovered in their chicken soup. A nightmare scenario for families with children who have life-threatening allergies. Walmart and other retailers scrambled to pull products off shelves, but by then, thousands of cans had already been sold. How many households unknowingly put their loved ones at risk? Then there's the issue of additives and questionable sourcing. Progresso soups often contain modified cornstarch, soybean oil, and sugar, raising concerns about hidden GMOs and ultra-processed filler ingredients. Nutritionists point out that many vegetable soups in their lineup contain shockingly little real vegetable matter, sometimes just fragments of carrots or peas floating in a sea of starchy broth. That's not nutrition. That's illusion. Investigations have also raised questions about sourcing from overseas suppliers, where labor practices and pesticide oversight are notoriously lax. In one supply chain audit, traces of pesticide residues and heavy metals were discovered in canned goods tied to Progresso's operations. And yet, the brand markets itself as sophisticated, even European-inspired. The very name Progresso implies quality, tradition, and refinement. But what consumers actually get is a can loaded with salt, filler, and risk. A product that preys on trust and image rather than delivering true nutrition. Seniors who believe they're choosing a smarter option may, in reality, be exposing themselves to the very same health threats as the cheaper brands they avoided. The bottom line, Progresso has mastered the art of selling a lie, a shinier can, a fancier name, and a reputation for quality that collapses under scrutiny. When your health, your heart, and even your life are on the line, premium branding means nothing if the contents inside are just as dangerous as the rest. Number 3. Great value. Walmart's in-house Great Value brand has built an empire by promising affordability. It's the label millions of Americans reach for when they want to save $1 on groceries, believing they're getting the same quality as name brands for less. But in the world of canned soups, Great Value often represents the most dangerous gamble you can make at the supermarket. On the surface, the ingredients look simple, but dig deeper and you'll find that Great Value soups are often manufactured by third-party contractors, many of whom operate massive factories overseas or in poorly regulated facilities across the US. This means Walmart doesn't directly make the soup. They just slap their label on it. And that separation is exactly what leads to recurring safety nightmares. In fact, Great Value has been involved in multiple recalls, including one tied to metal shavings found in canned products. Imagine opening a can of soup meant for your child, only to find out it could contain fragments of machinery that slipped through because quality checks were rushed to cut costs. Nutritionally, Great Value soups are some of the worst offenders in the entire aisle. A single can can easily exceed 1,600 milligrams of sodium, drowning cheap broth in salt to mask the lack of fresh, quality ingredients. Seniors who rely on these budget meals often don't realize they're consuming the very levels of sodium that drive America's heart disease epidemic. And it doesn't stop there. Many Great Value soups are loaded with MSG substitutes, high fructose corn syrup, and modified starches that strip away any resemblance to real food. Even so-called vegetable soups can contain less than 5% actual vegetables. The rest is filler broth thickened with starch and flavored artificially. For older Americans trying to stretch a fixed income, this is more than misleading. It's a direct attack on their health. And when recalls happen, Walmart's massive scale turns small problems into nationwide disasters. In one case, a contaminated batch of soup had to be pulled from shelves in over 34 states. The recall spread through Walmart's supply chain like wildfire, forcing millions of families to check their cupboards in fear. But what happens to the cans that don't get pulled? They end up in clearance bins, food pantries, or smaller stores, quietly sold to people who never even hear about the recall. That means vulnerable communities are often left holding the most dangerous products. Walmart's PR department downplays these events, but the truth is that Great Value is a ticking time bomb of shortcuts and cost-cutting. And perhaps the most chilling part, there is almost no transparency. Walmart refuses to disclose exactly which factories produce their Great Value soups, shielding the supply chain from scrutiny. That lack of accountability means families are putting blind trust into a label whose only promise is cheap. And cheap is exactly what you get. Cheap ingredients, cheap oversight, and a cheap regard for consumer safety. In a nation already battling record levels of heart disease, diabetes, and kidney failure, products like these aren't just a poor choice. They are actively feeding America's decline. Great Value may look like a bargain on the shelf, but when the hidden health costs pile up, it's one of the most expensive mistakes you can make with your body. Number 2. Campbell's Chunky. Marketed as the hearty, man-sized meal in a can, Campbell's Chunky has dominated NFL commercials for years, promising strength, energy, and comfort. The slogan, "Soup that eats like a meal," is burned into America's culture. But the reality inside that oversized can is nothing short of shocking. A single serving of Chunky's classic chicken noodle, or sirloin burger with country vegetables, isn't just soup. It's a sodium bomb disguised as dinner. One can often delivers 2,000 milligrams of sodium or more, blowing past the entire daily recommended limit in a single sitting. For seniors, this isn't just a salty snack. It's a direct path to sky-high blood pressure, heart strain, and dangerous fluid retention. Doctors warn that meals like this can trigger hospitalization in older Americans with heart conditions. Yet the product is sold as if it were a healthy, hearty choice. And it isn't just salt. Chunky is loaded with preservatives, artificial flavor, boosters, and thickening agents that give the illusion of homemade cooking, but are nothing more than industrial shortcuts. In 2022, a class action lawsuit accused Campbell's Chunky of misleading consumers with its marketing claims of being natural and nutritious. Lawyers pointed out that the cans contained chemical additives and modified ingredients that would never pass as natural in a home kitchen. Even worse, investigations into Campbell's supply chain revealed that meat used in some Chunky soups came from industrial feedlots notorious for antibiotic overuse, raising serious yikes. Questions about long-term health risks and antibiotic resistance. And let's talk about recalls. In recent years, Campbell's Chunky has been pulled from shelves after contamination concerns, including foreign material found in cans that forced nationwide warnings. Walmart, Target, and Kroger all had to issue urgent alerts advising customers to return products immediately. The recalls barely made the news, overshadowed by bigger scandals, but they serve as chilling proof of how fragile and risky these mass-produced soups really are. For every recall we hear about, how many dangerous cans slip through undetected? The truth is, the scale of production is so massive, and the oversight so stretched that mistakes are inevitable. And with Chunky's branding targeted at families, kids, and sports fans, those mistakes put the most vulnerable at risk. But the betrayal runs deeper. Campbell's Chunky leans hard on nostalgia and advertising power. Super Bowl ads with NFL stars slurping soup, commercials showing hard-working moms serving it proudly. Yet behind the stage smiles, what consumers are actually feeding their families is a product closer to a chemical cocktail than a meal. And as Campbell's profits rise into the billions, ordinary Americans are left paying with their health. More medications, more doctor visits, more chronic conditions tied to diets. Heavy and processed sodium-packed foods. Campbell's Chunky isn't just soup. It's a case study in how corporations weaponize trust, tradition, and sports culture to sell products that quietly undermine American health. They sell you strength, but what they deliver is weakness, disease, and dependency. It is one of the most dangerous deceptions sitting on your Walmart shelf right now. Number 1. Campbell's Condensed Soups. This is the crown jewel of America's soup empire, the can every household recognizes instantly. Red and white, neat font, the very definition of classic. Generations of children grew up with Campbell's tomato, chicken noodle, and cream of mushroom. School cafeterias, hospital kitchens, church potlucks, all ran on Campbell's condensed soups, believing they were feeding people comfort and nutrition. But what if I told you this classic product is one of the most deceptive and dangerous foods still sitting on Walmart shelves today? A single half-can serving of Campbell's condensed cream of mushroom contains over 870 milligrams of sodium. But who eats half a can? Finish the can like most people do, and you're swallowing nearly 1,800 milligrams of sodium in one sitting, plus thickening agents like modified starch, soy protein concentrate, and a laundry list of additives that have nothing to do with real food. Doctors have called products like this silent killers because they don't make you sick right away. Instead, they slowly push your blood pressure higher, stress your kidneys, and accelerate the decline of your arteries. For seniors, who often rely on quick canned meals, this is a recipe for heart failure. And here's the darker truth. Campbell's condensed soups aren't just sold as ready-to-eat meals. They're marketed as ingredients in recipes, casseroles, gravies, sauces. That means families aren't consuming just one can. They're consuming multiple in a single dish. Imagine a holiday casserole loaded with 3 cans of Campbell's cream of mushroom. That's 5,000 milligrams of sodium before you even add cheese or seasoning. It's no wonder America's rates of hypertension and stroke are skyrocketing. Yet Campbell's still runs ads with cozy kitchens, holiday cheer, and nostalgia, selling poison wrapped in tradition. Worse, Campbell's condensed line has been at the center of serious contamination scares. In 2023, Walmart issued an urgent recall involving condensed soups feared to contain dangerous contaminants that spread through 34 states. Customers were told to return products immediately or risk exposure to harmful bacteria. The story barely made headlines, but it sent shockwaves through families who realized they had trusted a product that could have poisoned them in their own homes. Think about that. A staple food, marketed for decades as safe and comforting, suddenly exposed as a nationwide hazard. And if one recall reached that scale, how many near misses never became public? And then there's the issue of can linings. Despite repeated promises, investigations have revealed that some Campbell's condensed soups are still packaged in cans lined with materials that leach BPA and other hormone-disrupting chemicals into the food. For seniors, BPA exposure is linked to increased risk of dementia, metabolic disorders, and hormone imbalances. For children, it can interfere with development. Yet Campbell's continues to cut costs with outdated packaging, hiding behind vague supply chain challenges while putting millions of families at risk. The betrayal here is almost poetic. Campbell's condensed soups built their empire on the image of home, safety, and care. They weren't just a product. They were woven into American culture, recipes, even art. And yet, the same cans that symbolized family dinners are now symbols of corporate greed, cost-cutting, and disregard for human health. They are cheap to make, easy to market, and profitable at massive scale. But the true cost is paid in emergency room visits, prescription medications, and lives cut short. When Walmart had to pull these cans from shelves in 34 states, it wasn't just a recall. It was a wake-up call. A warning siren that what we thought was safe wasn't. What we thought was tradition was deception. And what we thought was food was little more than a corporate product engineered for profit. This isn't just soup. This is the collapse of trust in America's food system, playing out can by can, shelf by shelf. So, there you have it. 5 of the most trusted soup brands in America, exposed for what they really are. From Campbell's nostalgic labels to Progresso's fake premium claims, from Walmart's great value shortcuts to the oversized sodium bombs of Campbell's Chunky, and finally, the shocking nationwide recall of Campbell's condensed soups. This isn't just about dinner anymore. This is about a food system built on deception, marketing, and corporate greed, where the cost is quietly pushed onto the very people who can least afford it. Seniors living on fixed incomes, families trying to stretch their grocery budgets, parents who think they're feeding their kids something safe. All of them are left holding cans filled with chemicals, salt, and risk. And when the truth finally slips through, like Walmart's recall that swept across 34 states, it's already too late for the families who opened, heated, and served those meals. The corporations walk away with profits, the ads keep rolling, and the cycle continues. But here's the real question. How many more recalls? How many more hidden additives? How many more broken promises are sitting on your pantry shelf right now? Because if even the most iconic brands, the soups we grew up with, the soups our grandparents swore by, can betray us this deeply, then what faith can we place in the rest of America's processed food empire? This isn't just a warning about canned soup. It's a symbol of something far bigger, the collapse of trust in the very foods that once defined American comfort. So check your pantry, read the labels, and ask yourself, when profit comes first, who's really protecting your family's health? Because if this is what soup has become, then what else are we eating without question?